situation. Let's have a look at money or the circulation of commodities and how that develops. Here's the breakdown of the chapter. You can see money as a measure of value, money as a medium of exchange, the metamorphosis of commodities, currency of money, coin and symbols of value, and finally money in terms of hoarding, means of payment, and universal money. So we're going to look at all of these particular things one by one. Let's start with money as a measure of value. Marx says, the first chief function of money is to act as a universal measure of value. It is not money that makes commodities commensurable, as Aristotle incorrectly thought. It is because they are commensurable as products of human labor that they are commensurable in terms of money. So it's not because of money that commodities can exchange with each other. It's because commodities can exchange with each other that money is created. Money itself, of course, has no price. It is the price of other commodities. So price or money form is a purely ideal or mental form in the sense, not in the sense that money is mental, but in the sense that if you want to say something is worth this much, you don't actually need the money to be able to say it is worth this much. So as a measure of value, you don't have to have the money to measure the value of a commodity. Since the expression of the value of commodities in gold is merely an ideal act, we may use for this purpose imaginary or ideal money. In other words, you can value something without having the money. That's pretty obvious. Nothing new being said over here. Secondly, it is a standard of price. As a measure of value, it is the socially recognized incarnation of human labor, but as a standard of price, it is a fixed weight of metal. So what is the standard of price? What is the measure of value? Measure of value was just how much is that coffee versus how much is that chai. Now, as a standard of price, the how much is in terms not of that chai, but in terms of the money commodity. And the money commodity is measured in terms of its weight. Its quantity, in other words. In order to make gold a standard of price, a certain weight must be fixed upon as the unit in which it is measured. So the chai that you're drinking is measured in terms of the weight of gold. ठीक है? साथ सी बात है. You remember the scales where you put a weight of gold to understand, how much that is worth, etc. So before they become money, gold or silver and copper already possess such standard measures in their standards of weight. Even before gold was money, weights had already been created. We already knew what weights were. Hence, the names given to the standards of price were originally taken from the pre-existing names of the standards of weight. You had standards of weight, and that's what you began to use as a standard of price. Simple. The word pound, for example, was the money name given to an actual pound of silver. Over time, the word pound became differentiated from the same word as a weight name. So 1 pound, when you step on the scale and you discover, oh my God, I'm 181 pounds now, that's weight. It's the same pound weight that is now used in the UK as when you say 1 pound. 1 pound fish. Have you heard that song? 1 pound fish. Right? So that pound is weight. Why do they have the same name? They have the same name because it was originally 1 pound of silver. That's how it began. A change in the value of gold does not in any way affect its function, therefore, as a standard of price. Why? However great the fall of its value, 12 ounces of gold still have 12 times the value of 1 ounce of gold. So as a standard of price, no change occurs. Nominal change does occur, but there is no change within that standard at all. This is very obvious. 12 ounces of gold is 12 times the value of 1 ounce of gold, correct? So if the value of gold goes up or goes down, the standard still remains the same. That is that there is still no change in that 12 ounces of gold is equal to 12 times the value of 1 ounce. That doesn't change. It's when you break it up into parts, the relationship between the parts remains the same even if the value of gold goes up or the value of gold goes down. That's what we mean by standard of price, of course. A change in the value of gold does not interfere with its function as a measure of value or even as a standard of price. It does change, but still it is able to measure value and it is able to act as a standard of price even though the value of gold may go up and down. The change affects all commodities simultaneously. Therefore, ceteris paribus leaves their relative values inter se unaltered, although those values are now expressed in higher or lower gold prices. So if the value of gold goes up or down, that may cause inflation or deflation. The nominal value of commodities will change, but in relation to each other, there will be no change in the values of commodities. And in relation to the different parts of gold, 1 ounce versus 12 ounces, there will be no change in that relationship either. Now, inflation or deflation, rise in general prices, etc. How does this work? He says a general rise in the prices of commodities can result only from a rise in their values, the value of money remaining constant. So if the value of gold is constant and the value of all other commodities goes up, then obviously you would have to have more gold to buy those commodities. From a fall in the value of money, the values of commodities remaining constant. So if the value of gold goes down, then again you need more gold in order to buy the same amount of commodities. So they have a relationship with each other. If the value of this goes up, or if the value of this goes down, the effect is the same, which is that there's a general rise in prices, or you can look at it the other way, there's a general fall in the value of gold, same thing. A general fall in prices can result only from a fall in the value of commodities, the value of money remaining constant, or from a rise in the value of money, the value of commodities remaining constant. So basically you're looking at them in relation to each other. If the values of commodities goes up, you need more money to buy them, the same amount. If the values of gold relatively goes up, you need less gold to buy the same amount of commodities. We all know this because we suffered from inflation in the last couple of years in Pakistan, so we know that this is how it works. If a value of a commodity rises proportionally with the value of money, there is no alteration in price. And if the value of a commodity rises slower or faster than that of money, the fall or rise in their prices will be determined by the difference between the change in their value and that of money. Saying the same thing. It's nothing different, nothing new. If the value of money rises, but the value of commodity rises more, then in relation to each other, monies become cheaper. If the commodities fall, but the value of money also falls, but the commodities fall by more in relation to each other, monies become more expensive. Just a relative value, nothing complicated. Now, how does money then transform over time, and how do the names of money and the pound, etc., change over time? He says there are three factors. Firstly, the importation of foreign money into an imperfectly developed community resulted in the change of names. This happened in Rome in its early days, where gold and silver coins circulated at first as foreign commodities. So when the gold coins came into Rome at first, they had the name from the community from which they got it. They had a foreign name. And so the Romans adopted that foreign name. The names of these foreign coins never coincide with those of the indigenous weights. So this happens, that when you get money from outside, in history this happened, that Rome adopted the name that was the weight name of the coin of the society that they were trading with, rather than using their own weight name. Okay, no problem. The less precious metal is thrust out by the more precious from its place as a measure of value. So for example, copper was thrust out by silver, silver was thrust out by gold. Instead of copper, you developed silver. Instead of silver, you use gold. Why? Because as trade began to expand, you needed more and more money, and the amount of copper you would need to buy a cow, for example, would be like so much copper, it would be very difficult to take to the market. So like, oh my God, all this copper I have to take, I'll take the silver instead. So what happened? That the value of 1 pound of copper or one weight name of copper got attached to silver, and that value got attached to gold as well. When gold replaced silver as a measure of value, for example, the same name was applied according to the ratio between the values of silver and gold to perhaps 1/115th of the pound of gold. The word pound as a money name thus became differentiated from the same word as a weight name. In other words, you had 1 pound of silver, and it literally, the silver weighed 1 pound, and that's why it was called a pound, because it was 1 pound of silver. But they used the same name for gold. They valued it at 1/115th, because obviously gold is much more expensive, right? But they also called that a pound. Even though it wasn't 1 pound of gold anymore, it was 1/115th pound, right, of gold. It was equal to the silver, so they used that name. They said, ye bhi pound hai. Although it's not really 1 pound in terms of weight. So the weight became irrelevant, the name stuck, is basically what he's saying. The debasing of money carried on for centuries by kings and princes to such an extent that of the original weights of the coin, nothing in fact remained but the names. So originally they were all classed according to the weight, but then kings debased money. What it means to debase a money is, or a currency, is that the coin contained less and less silver in it, but it still bought the same amount. That's called debasing the currency. And so the weight of the coin started becoming irrelevant. The name stuck. The name pound, the name stone, the name, all the names that you have, etc., of the currencies are basically names of weights. That got stuck, but actually the weight got, the actual weight became irrelevant. Every trace of a value relation disappears in the names, pound, dollar, franc, ducat, etc. The names remained, but the relationship to the weight finished over time. That's how things changed. These money names express both the values of commodities and at the same time aliquot parts of the weight of the metal that is the standard of money. So in other words, the name remained, the aliquot parts remained, etc., but the value was now something totally different from the value where it began as a weight. They took the name, they got rid of the weight. Basically, to put it simply for you. Magnitude of value expresses a relation individual to the overall social production. So what is magnitude of value? It is the amount of labor you have put in a commodity. How is that to be measured? It's to be measured in relation to the whole of labor that society is doing. You have done one part of the labor that all of society is doing. Like Robinson Crusoe, who took note of one part of work time that he spent cooking food versus all the time he spent on all tasks. It's the same with individuals. Magnitude of value is the connection that necessarily exists between a certain article and the portion of the total labor time of society required to produce it. Okay? So you have spent a certain amount of time and society has spent a certain amount of time, and the magnitude of value is your time in relation to that overall time, the socially necessary labor time that you have spent. As soon as magnitude of value is converted into price, the above necessary relation takes the shape of a more or less accidental exchange ratio between a single commodity and another, the money commodity. So when it's expressed in price, that same relationship of the magnitude of value in your commodity versus all other commodities takes the form now of the magnitude of the price in relation to all the other the prices of all other commodities. It's the same relationship expressed in price. The relationship of your labor to society's labor is the same as the price of your commodity to all other prices created. Or the relationship of your commodity to all the commodities of that kind that are produced is the same as the relationship of your labor in relation to all the people who labored on that kind of commodity. It's the same proportion, in other words, is what he's saying. Now, here's the most important part. He says price can deviate from magnitude of value. Now you understand what magnitude of value is. It's the labor embodied in the commodity. It's measured as SNLT. SNLT is measured in this way by looking at the average across society. That's what magnitude of value is. Magnitude of value and price can deviate from each other. He says this is not a defect. This is not a problem. It's not a defect. But on the contrary, admirably adapts the price form to a mode of production whose inherent laws impose themselves only on as the mean of apparently lawless irregularities that compensate one another. In other words, it's a good thing that the price can deviate from the magnitude of value, because that's how the market readjusts. That's how this mode of production functions, in fact. When the price deviates from the magnitude of value, people begin to produce more of that. When it rises above the magnitude of value, people produce more of that. When it goes below the magnitude of value, people withdraw from that. That's how the whole market system functions. If it was exactly at the magnitude of value, actually that would be a bad thing for the market economy. Although this can also have a bad consequence. But that's how it works, is what he's trying to say. Objects that are not commodities, such as conscience, honor, etc., are capable of being offered for sale by their holders and of thus acquiring through their price the form of commodities. In other words, they look like commodities. They are not commodities, but they may look like commodities. I may decide that if you get me a nice bar of Cadbury's chocolate, etc., that I'll give you an A in the next quiz. I won't. But let's say that hypothetically that happens, right? Let's say that that happens. I've given you something, you've given me something, but this is not a commodity. This is not a commodity according to Marx. So things that are not commodities can look like commodities. These are not commodities. Their price is not determined by value but by use value. So if Michael Jackson's famous glove that he wore when he was doing Billie Jean is sold on the market, and in auction it might sell for millions. Is it selling for its value? Of course not. Its value might just be $50 or $100 or something, God knows. No, 100 bhi nahi ho sakti. $25 or something. It's a cheap glove. but it sells for millions. It's departed from its value. Why? Because it's not a commodity. It's something quite different from a commodity. It's not being reproduced and sold again and again, and hence its price is not coming to its value precisely because the cost of production is irrelevant here. It's just a one-time thing. If I find from Egypt some amazing thing like the Holy Grail or something, and I bring it and I sell it in an auction, it's not a commodity. It looks like a commodity because I get money for it. But it's not, because it doesn't have its value as a consequence of production. It has its value as a consequence of its rarity. So it's not a commodity. A price, therefore, implies both that a commodity is exchangeable for money and also that it must be so exchanged. Right? So a commodity wants to be exchanged. Gold serves as an ideal measure of value only because it has already, in the process of exchange, established itself as the money commodity. All right? So gold is ideal for this whole purpose. Now, as a medium of circulation, when we enter the market, we bring with us a commodity. We take that commodity and we sell it. When we sell it, we get money. Is the money useful to us? Absolutely not. It's totally useless to us. We don't want to consume the money commodity, whether it's gold or silver or whatever it is. Actually, we only brought the commodity to the market in order to sell it to get money to buy something else. So we will take that money and in turn we will buy another commodity. This is called the metamorphosis of commodity, or also known as the circulation of commodities. Now please note, all these three things are actually commodities. This was my commodity, this is something you had, this is another commodity. As a commodity, they have a dual character. They are useful, they have use value, and they are products of labor, they have value. Why do they have a dual character? Because labor has a dual character. Labor is useful, it produces use value, and labor is part of the, produces value in the sense that it is part of the work that we do, and as such, as homogeneous abstract human labor, it creates value. So I have this thing and I have no use for it. I have no utility for it. It has no utility for me, but it has value because I produced it. I sell this thing for its value, not for its utility. I sell it for its value and get in exchange for that money, which also has value, which has only the utility to me that with it I can buy something else. It has no utility to me in terms of its physical properties. Only because it is the repository of value does it have any utility to me. In fact, the first commodity is only useful to me insofar as I can get with it value, other values. So I sell it. Now the person I sell it to is the person with money. And they will only buy it if it is useful to them. So the thing that I produce is useless to me and useful to the person who buys it. And the person who's buying it is basically giving money to me in exchange for it. So he trades the value that he has for the use value that I have. And I trade the use value, which was useless to me, for value for something that for which I get now money, and then I will go with that and buy something that is truly useful to me. So Marx puts it in this way: commodities are in love with money. What he means is that commodities want to be exchanged with money. But the course of true love never did run smooth. I love this saying because it's so bloody true. Okay, true love is always messy. From the pole of the commodity owner, it is a sale. From the opposite pole of the money owner, it is a purchase. In other words, a sale is a purchase. A CM is also an MC. I have given you the commodity. I have sold it to you. You have bought it from me. A sale is a purchase and a purchase is a sale. But the course of love is not smooth. There can be lots of problems here. Keep watching what happens. It's going to get messy, as I told you. So MC or purchase is the second aspect of it. You can look at it from your side. MC is a purchase, is at the same time a sale. You purchased, I've sold you. The concluding metamorphosis of one commodity is the first metamorphosis of another. In other words, I have sold you something. That's like one metamorphosis. Why is he calling it a metamorphosis? Because it's changing form. What was what was value and use value, but no use value to me, I sold it and I got, the commodity is gone now, and what did I get in turn? Money of the same value. The two phases, each inverse to the other, that make up the metamorphosis of a commodity constitute together a circular movement or the circuit of commodity exchange. That is what the circuit of commodity exchange is. The total of all the different circuits constitute the circulation of commodities. So I sell and you purchase, and then the whole thing circulates again. Now, one very important thing is that as I take this commodity, I get with it money, you get this commodity. Now this commodity, falls out of circulation. I take that money and I buy another commodity with it. Now the money that you gave me has gone to this guy. I sold you something, got money for it. With that money, I bought something from this guy. The money moves from you to me to him. My commodity moves to you, and then you eat it up. I give you the money, I get the commodity from you, and I consume it. So each time this metamorphosis occurs, the commodity continually falls out of circulation. But what stays in circulation? The money. The money moves all throughout society from one commodity to the other like a snake. And every commodity it touches, like that game we used to play, if I touch you, you have to sit down, or if I touch you, you can't run around, pakdan pakadai, or whatever, baraf pani. So money is like that. Every commodity it metamorphoses with, exchanges with, it falls out of circulation. But it continues to run around society throughout. That's why he says, circulation sweats money from every pore. Every hole in your body, money comes out of it. What is the body? The body is circulation. The exchange of commodities creates, like when I run, it creates sweat. In the same way, when we trade, it creates money almost like it is sweat. Circulation of commodity breaks through all local and personal bounds, inseparable from direct barter, and develops a circulation of the products of social labor. So with money, you can now trade widely and as much as you want, with anybody you want. It develops a whole network of social relations spontaneously in their growth and entirely beyond the control of the actors. Suddenly, it's no longer even in my control. The market just boom, develops, everybody's trading with everybody. It's not in my control anymore, not in your control, not in anybody's control. It just starts to develop that way. The money does not vanish on dropping out of the circuit of the metamorphosis of a given commodity. It is constantly being precipitated into new places in the arena of circulation, vacated by other commodities. The commodity falls, the money moves. The commodity falls, the money moves. Every seller brings his buyer to the market with him, said one famous economist. He says, but nothing can be more childish than the dogma that because every sale is a purchase and every purchase a sale, therefore the circulation of commodities necessarily implies an equilibrium of sales and purchases. That's not necessary. It's possible that there are many sellers in the market and not enough buyers. And it's possible that there are many buyers in the market and not enough sellers. Because the course of love never did flow smooth. Commodities they are in love with money, they want to be traded with money. But just because they want to be traded with money doesn't mean that that always happens, or vice versa. These modes therefore imply the possibility of crisis. So when does a crisis occur? When there are sellers come and there aren't enough buyers, or when buyers come there aren't enough sellers. This is, of course, he's criticizing Say's law. Demand and supply is always not going to be equal with each other. In fact, it's going to move up and down. Sometimes there'll be too many buyers, sometimes too many sellers, etc. The movement directly imparted to money by the circulation of commodities takes the form of a constant motion away from its starting point. You had the money, I gave you a commodity, it came to me. I bought from you, his money moved away from him and will further move away from him, and so on. The notes that are in my pocket, if I could put a tracker on them, it would be so interesting to know where they go. I don't know where they go. This morning I bought chicken lasagna and I had it for lunch. The note, 500 rupee note that I gave, I wish I could put a tracker on it. It'd be so interesting to see where it ends up. Maybe it will end up in bloody Chicha Watni, or maybe it will end up in Karachi, who knows. But it will move, and it will move further and further away from me. Maybe it might even come back, through some circuit or whatever, God knows. Although the movement of the money is merely the expression of the circulation of commodities, yet the contrary appears to be the actual fact, and the circulation of commodities seems to be the result of the movement of the money. So it looks like because the money is moving, commodities are circulating. No. It's because commodities are circulating that money is moving. The movement of money is not the cause, but the effect. of the circulation of commodities. What about the quantity of money that you require for this movement? He says, well, you have a certain quantity of money, let's call that the money supply, and every coin of that moves with a certain speed. We're going to call that the velocity of money. Every time it turns over, it moves from one person to another, from one exchange to another exchange to another exchange. Then you have the prices of commodities, and of course, the number of commodities. The output is what we're calling it, the real output. He says the quantity of money functioning as the circulating medium is equal to the sum of the prices of the commodities divided by the number of moves made by the coins of the same denomination. It means the same thing. This is the quantity theory of money he's explaining. He's saying how much money do you need for this circulation to take place will depend on these factors. Number one, how much are the total commodities that are produced, the value of the total commodities, versus how fast can the money move. The faster the money can move, the less money I need. The slower money that the money moves, the more money I need. The greater the number of commodities that are going to be exchanging, the more money I need. The less the number of commodities, the less money I need. The more expensive the commodities that are exchanging, the more money I need. The less expensive the commodities, the less money I need. That's the quantity theory of money. The only difference, therefore, between coin and bullion is one of shape. He discusses coins next. He says the only difference is the shape. Otherwise, it's the same. Coining, like the establishment of a standard of price, is the business of the state. Modern legislation, therefore, fixes the loss of weight sufficient to demonetize a gold coin. In other words, legislation fixes that if the coin, in terms of its weight, becomes this much, then it is demonetized. It will not be counted as money anymore. We will fix it, we will melt it, and we will create a new coin out of it. Silver and copper tokens as substitutes for gold money, gold coins can be created and are created, and the state says, okay, because the silver in circulation, आपने जेब में डाला, आपने किसी को दिया, हाथों में रगड़ा गया, etc., it is losing its weight. So what does the government do? First, the government says, if it loses this much weight, after that, we will take it from circulation, we will give you another coin for it, and we will melt it and we'll fix it up, etc. It costs them that. These are the costs of circulation. But then they said, yeah, instead of using silver, just use gold, just use this copper coin, and now just consider that the copper coin is equal to the silver coin. That's what begins to happen. Their function become more and more independent of their weight. So we can now begin to substitute for the silver and the gold copper coins and say to the public, since we're already legislating for the value of the coins, we can say, just use the copper coin, everybody listen to me, treat it at the same value as a silver coin. I will give you the silver if you ever need it. You come to me with that copper coin, it's minted by me, I'll give you the silver for it. Happy? Everybody says, yes, we're happy. So now copper coins begin to circulate, other metals begin to circulate at the value that is stamped on them by the state, saying this is what their value is. Therefore, things that are relatively without value, such as paper notes now, can also serve as coins in its place. Now they say, why use coins? Let's just use paper. It's even cheaper than making copper coins. Paper money is a token representing gold or money. As I always like to point out, that your money actually has a signature by the governor of the State Bank of Pakistan. Oh my God, I can't read this anymore, my eyes have gone kharab. बैंक दौलत पाकिस्तान 50 रुपए हामिल हाजा को मुतालबे पर अदा करेगा, हुकूमत पाकिस्तान की ज़मानत का जारी हुआ. हाँ, और जमील अहमद साहब ने लिखा, गवर्नर बैंक दौलत पाकिस्तान. तो जमील अहमद को मैं पकड़ूंगा अगर मैं इससे 50 रुपए की चीज़ ना खरीद सका. उसने वादा किया हुआ है, गवर्नमेंट ने वादा किया हुआ है कि इसकी वैल्यू जो है वो एक एस्टैब्लिश्ड वैल्यू है. एक वक्त में तो वादा ये भी था कि इसकी जो वैल्यू, इसके एवज आपको हम सोना दे देंगे, चांदी दे देंगे, जो भी इस पे लिखा हुआ है आपको दे देंगे. अब नहीं देंगे, ठीक है ना. अब तो उनके पास वैसे खुद भी बैंकक्रप्ट है. सो पेपर मनी के नाउ एक्ट एज टोकन मनी. Gold and silver thus become themselves social expressions for superfluity or wealth. If I have a lot of wealth, what do I have? I have a lot of gold. I have a lot of silver. Along with the extension of circulation, increases the power of money, that absolutely social form of wealth ever ready for use. Gold is a wonderful thing, says Christopher Columbus. Whoever possesses it is lord of all he wants. By means of gold, one can even get souls into paradise, says Christopher Columbus. So gold becomes the measure of wealth. Today it's not gold, although some people do buy gold and put it into their bank accounts, etc. Today it might be dollars, right? Dollars are as precious as gold in Pakistan now. Sometimes more precious, they rise up faster sometimes, right? So what do these people start to do? They start to hoard it. They start to hold on to it as wealth. Although it's not created for that purpose, it's created for the purpose of circulation. But as a symbol of wealth, there are some people who want to hold on to it. Money, now, this gold money becomes the holy grail. Money itself is a commodity, an external object capable of becoming the private property of any individual. Thus, social power becomes the private property of private persons. Because I can buy your labor with money, that's why money gives you power, real power. If somebody says money doesn't buy you happiness, is probably true. But if somebody says money does not give you power, that's totally wrong. It does. It gives you power. It gives you power over other people's labor. It gives you power over other people's time. The ancients, therefore, that's why the ancients denounced money as subversive. They said, yes, this is the devil. Money is the root of all evil. In fact, they used to say. Money is just the product, he's saying, of circulation of commodities, of commodity exchange. It itself is just like the sweat that comes out of circulation. It has no power on its own. Modern society, which soon after its birth pulled Plutus by the hair of his head from the bowels of the earth, greets gold as its holy grail, as the glittering incarnation of the very principle of its own life. Plutus, of course, is golden. So he's pulling him out of the hair means pulling gold out of the earth. Mahavra there. Okay, modern society considers this to be the end-all and be-all of its desire. Money has no bound to its efficacy. It is the universal representative of material wealth. But every actual sum of money is limited in amount and therefore has only a limited efficacy. So if I have 10 lakh rupees, that's the efficacy I have. That's the social power I have. This antagonism between the quantitative limits of money, that I have only 10 lakh rupees, and its qualitative boundlessness, that actually money can buy everything, almost, in society, all kinds of labor, continually acts as a spur to the hoarder in his Sisyphus-like labor of accumulating. The fact that if I could only have another 10 lakh rupees, I could have more power, I keep wanting to accumulate it and so on. It is with him as it is with a conqueror who sees in every new country annexed only a new boundary. So the hoarder just wants more and more and more money to come to him. And this creates the gold fetish. The hoarder makes a sacrifice of the lusts of the flesh to his gold fetish. He's going to forego having fun and doing this and having beer and drinking and having good food, etc. Because what does he want? He wants to save his gold. He doesn't want to spend it. He's holding on to it. It reminds me of, what was that cartoon character, Scrooge. Hard work, saving, and avarice are therefore his three cardinal virtues. And to sell much and buy little, the sum of his political economy. The hoarder just wants to do this. Sell as much as possible, get the gold, hold on to it. Don't buy. That's the whole political economy of this kind of individual that he's talking about, etc. But there is also a necessity of certain hoards. The quantity of money currently unceasingly ebbs and flows. The mass must therefore be capable of expansion and contraction. So the circulation of commodities sometimes speeds up and sometimes slows down. When it speeds up, you need more money. When it slows down, you need less money. So you do need a certain hoard, in fact, because exchange goes up and down. When it goes up and down, the amount of money you need also goes up and down to facilitate that exchange. It is necessary that the quantity of gold and silver in a country be greater than the quantity required to function as coin. This condition is fulfilled by money taking the form of hoards. These reserves serve as conduits for the supply or withdrawal of money to or from the circulation, which in this way never overflows its banks. So unlike this Mr. Scrooge, who just wants to hoard because he has a fetish for gold, because it is a symbol of wealth in our society, this kind of hoard is a hoard that actually is a requirement by exchange and trade itself. And now money enters its third phase of development. The third phase is as a means of payment. He says because there are different conditions of production, You may produce today and I may not want to buy. You may want to buy today and I may not want to sell. So exchange, trade automatically generates a situation where not every sale and purchase in terms of time is exactly well timed with each other. Sometimes you buy in advance. Sometimes you sell in advance. And whenever you buy and sell in advance, you develop what he calls credit, or what everybody calls credit. The purchase MC and the sale CM may depart from each other. Hence, the vendor becomes a creditor, the purchaser becomes a debtor. Credit develops inevitably from simple circulation, he says. The class struggles of the ancient world were all over credit. The debtors wanted that their debts be forgiven in ancient Rome. So while hoarding, just for the sake of hoarding to have more money, etc., as a distinct mode of acquiring riches vanishes with the progress of civil society, as capitalism develops, that old kind of hoarding which you saw over here, in which I put poor Aishwarya Rai, although I should have probably put Abani and his family, etc. here. But anyway, you get the picture that he says becomes less and less the case, and the hoard becomes more about dealing with exchange and the ups and downs of exchange, and also it becomes about credit. While hoarding as a distinct mode of production goes away as capitalism develops, the formation of reserves of the means of payment grows with that progress. So credit grows. Credit will inevitably grow as trade grows, because as trade grows, more and more trade occurs. Not all trade is perfectly timed. Because it's not perfectly timed, you sometimes buy and sell at different places, and when you do that, you need credit, or you give credit, or you take credit, etc. It becomes inevitable. So credit is just as much inevitable as a part of exchange as is money. And finally, we come to international trade. With international trade now, in his time certainly, he says you cannot use the national money of your own country. What do you have to use instead? You have to use gold bullion, okay? In international trade, the value of commodities is expressed so as to be universally recognized. And what is universally recognized? Because the other country or the people don't recognize your money. Americans don't recognize Pakistani money. They don't want Pakistani money. You give them Pakistani money, they're like, what's this? Give me dollars, etc., right? Just as every country needs a reserve of money for its home circulation, so too it requires one for external circulation in the markets of the world. So what is that reserve for external trade? It is, for this latter function, the genuine money commodity, actual gold and silver, is necessary. That's why countries then reserve bullions. So he's explaining to you all the different ways in which how much money you need in order to get that circulation going. First is just the money you needed for one trade. Then you needed more money because there are ebbs and flows, etc. Then you needed more money or you needed more gold because you needed to trade with others. There was also devaluation of the coin itself. It was losing value. All of these things tells you how much money you actually need in order for all this trade to happen. Countries in which capitalism is developed to a certain extent limit the hoards concentrated in the strong rooms of the banks to the minimum required for the proper performance of their peculiar functions. In other words, they put that hoard into their bank vaults of the central bank, but they keep the minimum there that they need in order for international trade to be possible. So this tells you now overall how money functions as a consequence of exchange, all the different kinds of exchange, how credit develops out of exchange, how money itself develops out of exchange, and how the whole thing is just like sweat coming out of the body of the circulation of commodities.